Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey son, you got a party, got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Debt and childhood poverty. Oh, somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy. Oh yeah.
Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phony, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
What you saw on Channel 4 last night was just a snapshot. The truth is actually far darker, and it runs deeper than most dare to admit. Channel 4 most definitely will not take you there. Yes, this is a national scandal, but Groomed, a national scandal, only showed you a fraction of what is really taking place and what is actually at stake. Yes, of course, some survivors were finally heard, and how brave of them. How brave of them. And yes, the scale of the abuse begins to break through when a mainstream media outlet, a legacy media outlet, is forced to show what it did last night. But what they didn't show you, is probably more important than what they did. They didn't show you why these men gang raped these children. They shied away from that. Watch the program again, watch the documentary again, and you'll see that not only did they shy away from that themselves, the survivors they spoke to, it was either edited out or they never asked the questions anyway. Why? Why matters? Why did these men, thousands of men, clearly, I think that was made clear just off the handful of young women who bravely came forward and gave their testimony. So the why is not there. Why did these men cover it up? And as to why the authorities looked the other way, no, it was just superficial. They focused on legacy interpretations where they'd call these children child prostitutes, and they want you outraged. They want you outraged at how dare we all think like that at that time. I didn't, but so many did. But actually, they didn't ask the why did the authorities look the other way either. Go and watch it again. It hints at it here and there. Maggie Oliver discloses, and it's the first time I've heard it, by the way. Maggie Oliver discloses that a Greater Manchester police officer was involved. But that's just in one case, in one area. The why the authorities looked the other way was also comprehensively sidestepped by Channel 4. And whilst they hinted at it right at the end, a footnote, if that. No one there, we are, but no one there is still asking the question. Why is the government covering it up? Why are the politicians covering it up? And of course, if you follow my work, you know I answer all of those whys And I've been answering all of those whys long before people have been even asking the questions. Barefaced lies is what they accused us of. Well, the truth is out. This isn't just historic. This isn't mismanagement. This is a culture of silence, cowardice. Yeah, cowardice. And cover-up that still exists today. You only need to look at what happened earlier on this week, when Jess Phillips rushed in to answer an urgent question. Those of you who joined me yesterday will have seen me systematically go through that. I just want to play you a 30-second clip before we start properly. He says, just give me one moment. I'll get sorted anytime soon, maybe. Here we go.
Mr. Speaker, the government is blocking a national inquiry into the rape gangs and says instead that we should have 5 local inquiries. But we know that there have been 50 places where these things have happened, and we know that in some of those places like Bradford, the local council are the ones blocking a local inquiry. And we know that the local authorities often don't have the powers they need to requisition evidence and summon witnesses. Indeed, this whole story began when Oldham Council wrote after the election to the Minister asking for the national powers that they needed. Why did the Minister refuse to meet with them?
I appreciate that this is where the whole story began for the Honourable Gentleman. It is not where the whole story began. Oldham Council had written, I believe, twice before to the previous government, as had Telford written to the previous government. So I'm afraid to say, for me, this story started many...
Order. To say it's simply untrue is trying to suggest the Minister. I think we've got to get this right.
Mr. Speaker, on point of order, it's not correct that Oldham Council had written to the last government. An individual councillor had. Oldham Council had not. That's the whole point.
I'm sure if there's been a mistake, the Minister will correct that. Minister.
I will check the record and make sure, but what I am absolutely certain of is the number of times that Telford Council wrote and asked. I'm not aware that Rotherham, in fact I am aware that not Rotherham, not Rochdale.
Okay, I've had enough of her. She's a liar. Jess Phillips, the Minister for Safeguarding, is a liar. There's no ifs, there's no buts, and I'll quantify it like I always do. First and foremost, Oldham Council, of course, did not write to the government 2 times. The opposition groups that we lobbied, the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives, wrote to the government, directly bypassing the council, because Jess Phillips' Labour Party controlled council 6 times refused to write to the government. It took us 5 years before that letter went to the government. Jess Phillips should know her facts when she comes in there, and she's a liar. Then she talks about how Telford wrote to the government. Telford did write to the government. The leader of Telford, who's now the MP, wrote to the government, Labour MP now, wrote to the government saying, don't come here, there's nothing to see. Do you see? Do you now see, if you're yet to see? So whilst Groomed, a national scandal, is worth watching, and you should watch it, and you should be outraged, there is far more taking place. So before we talk about Groomed, we must start somewhere else, and it is with Jess Phillips. It is with Jess Phillips and Keir Starmer yesterday. Let me be absolutely clear. What we witnessed in Parliament this week was nothing short of a national disgrace. Jess Phillips, Safeguarding Minister for Girls, a minister who claims to champion the rights of vulnerable women, standing at the dispatch box, not just lying, but systematically shutting down calls for a national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal that has ravaged our country for decades, at least 50. Yesterday, a survivor contacted me who'd been groomed and abused in the 1970s. Make no mistake, what Jess Phillips is doing, and Keir Starmer, and all the others, it is deliberate, it is calculated, and it is a cover-up happening in plain sight. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, and these people want you not to have been paying attention, they're counting on most of you not paying attention. Tens of thousands of little white girls. Liz Truss, the former Prime Minister, has quantified it as 100,000. Have been systematically raped, trafficked and abused by organised clans of Pakistani men across at least 50 British towns and cities. Not 5, like they're arguing over in terms of the local reviews. 50. These children, you saw it yesterday, some as young as 11, were treated as disposable by both their abusers and the authorities who were meant to protect them. Let that sink in. No barefaced lies now. No barefaced lies now. No one is going to come and knock on my door and try and arrest me again. The truth is out. The scale of the institutional betrayal is almost beyond comprehension. In Parliament on Monday, we heard about a girl called Jane, 12-year-old child, who was found by police being raped by... What did our brave police officers do? They arrested her. That's right, they arrested the 12-year-old. If that doesn't make your blood boil, if 100,000 children gang raped over decades and trafficked by Pakistani clans who have the ear of the Labour Party, I don't know what will. And yet Jess Phillips and her Labour Party colleagues think 5 local inquiries, 5, is sufficient. I'll spell out what this means. Those 5s, and it won't happen, by the way, because remember the Oldham Council one, they're not active partners in this. We forced them there. No council is going to volunteer. Just look at Bradford. No council is going to volunteer. 45, at least, that they know of will be ignored. What's that? 50,000 victims? If you go off 10,000 a place? With no right to answers, no path to justice, no peace. Is that acceptable to any of you? Because it sure as hell isn't acceptable to me. Of course, Bradford is a smoking gun. Birmingham is the hidden gun, isn't it, Jess Phillips? Yes, I will be doing a broadcast as soon as I'm able to, on the cover-up of the Pakistani Rape Gangs in Birmingham. But Bradford to me is closer to home because these Pakistani rape clans operated from Bradford to Rochdale to Oldham to Manchester along the M62 corridor. During the parliamentary debate, Conservative MP Philip Davis revealed that victims and a leading child abuse lawyer had written to the Home Secretary warning that the rape gang scandal across the Bradford district is likely to be one of the most significant of its kind in the UK. A leading child abuse lawyer had written to the Home Secretary. Even more damning, they stated that leaders at Bradford are literally deliberately seeking to avoid the commissioning of an in-depth inquiry for fear of unearthing a very significant problem. Read that again. Let me say it to you again. Local authorities in Bradford are actively blocking an investigation into child rape. And what is the government's response? A shrug of the shoulders and a vague promise to meet with victims. This is the fatal flaw in Jess Phillips' strategy exposed for all to see. Her local inquiry approach relies on the cooperation of the very people who may have facilitated, and definitely did do, cover up the abuse. It's like asking criminals to investigate themselves. In what universe does any of this make sense? This is our government. And let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? And I don't play these games, mate. I don't know who you are. You want to talk about non-Pakistani gangs, you go and do it somewhere else. I'm here for a very specific reason, and that's the reason. And people who follow my work understand why, because it was covered up. The other rape gangs weren't covered up. No one said to a gang of white men, we've got to consider the race relations here before we arrest anyone gang raping children. No politician is covering up for white men, unless they're the higher classes, of course. You saw that yesterday or the day before, and the Crown prosecution released a statement. So no, I don't play those games. You want that? Go somewhere else. I'm not going to be deflected. I'm not going to be diverted. Because I'm very clear, the Pakistani rape clans are a symptom of an underlying cancer that will potentially destroy our nation. Let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? The issue that has politicians and officials tying themselves in knots. In Parliament, we heard about retired Detective Chief Inspector John Peacos. John came to me, so we're clear. I listened to him. I helped him tidy up and focus his testimony. And then I took him to Charlie Peters. And then he met with the shadow Home Secretary. And his testimony is now in Parliament. Thank you so much, Ryan. John witnessed the abuse of a young girl, but was instructed by a chief superintendent to drop the matter to avoid antagonizing Bradford's Muslim community. There it is in black and white. He was warned he would be arrested. Children sacrificed on the altar of multiculturalism. Sir Trevor Phillips, the former head of the Race Equality Commission, the first chair of the Equality and Human Rights Commission, previous a Labour Party mayoral candidate in London, is hardly a right-wing firebrand. Trevor's very clear that the government's decisions appear to be obviously political and designed to avoid offending Muslim voters of Pakistani heritage. What are you going to do, policeman? Go and arrest Sir Trevor Phillips for being a racist? One of the country's most leading black public figures? Jess Phillips called this suggestion, ready? Disgraceful. I call it the truth that dare not speak its name. Let's be very clear. I'm not here to demonize any community. I have no doubt that the vast majority of British Pakistani and the wider Muslim community are horrified and want this issue dealing with. But let's be very, very clear. There is an underlying cultural factor in Britain's Pakistani community, specifically its Mirpuri community, that celebrates gang rape. They did it in Pakistan, and they've come to the UK, and they've brought with them the filthy practice of raping children through cultural norms and justified through their religious interpretations. Yes, it's uncomfortable to hear, but that is the truth. This is not racism. This is reality. And until our politicians find the courage to face this reality, justice will remain beyond our reach. Jess Phillips wants us to believe that local inquiries without statutory powers can somehow deliver justice. This is either naive or breathtaking proportions of deliberate deception. I think you know where my position is. Conservative MP Charles Hare cut through the nonsense. Some of the people involved in these local authority inquiries could be the very same individuals exactly who have covered up these heinous crimes for years. I am no concern about naming them. In my own town in Oldham, the latest chief executive to be appointed by Arooj Shah, the Pakistani gangster-endorsed leader of Oldham Council, heroin-dealing gangster-endorsed leader of Oldham Council, and we now all know of the direct correlation between the Pakistani heroin dealers and the rape clans. One of the children yesterday, one of the young women yesterday, made reference to it as an organised crime group. The same people who sold the heroin were selling our children. In Oldham, as in other towns and cities, what these Labour Party administrations are doing is they're getting their pieces on the board in the right places to try and continue the cover-up, which is why the new chief executive is one of Arooj Shah's close associates, a woman called Shelley Kipling, over-promoted, who was in the very communications team that covered up these rape gangs. And you've got Tom Crowther Casey sat in meetings with Arooj Shah and Shelley Kipling whilst they agree the terms of reference. Do you want these people to investigate themselves? What do you think is going to happen? In Manchester, the renowned, the experts, Newsom and Ridgway, Malcolm Newsom, Gary Ridgway, con artists. So I'm clear, con artists neck deep in the cover-up, were forced to resign and flee. If you believe nice people like Maggie Oliver, they'll say, oh, they resigned because they couldn't get to the truth. I have a very different take. They resigned because they knew they could no longer hide the truth. Fled. Andy Burnham's chairs. Resigned. Whoever you believe, the facts are there. Manchester Council, Rochdale Council, Oldham Council, all of them were still engaging in a cover-up as recently as last year. Yet Phillips, Jess Phillips, thinks this model should be replicated everywhere else. Without statutory powers to compel witnesses, no statutory powers to go after the evidence, reliant on those involved in the cover-up to provide you with the evidence and to set the terms of reference, these local inquiries are nothing but performative theatre, designed to give the appearance of action whilst ensuring nothing of substance changes so that you, I and everyone else goes away. When concerned, Phillips resorts to the oldest trick in the political handbook: delay. Everything is deferred to the forthcoming Casey review. I shall wait for the review being undertaken by Baroness Casey and what it tells me, and I will act on it, she says. But wait, I watched it. The Home Secretary promised on the 16th of January that the Casey review was actually a rapid audit that would be completed within 3 months. Well, 3 months have passed. Where is it? Meanwhile, Tom Crowther, and if you've followed my videos, you've seen his testimony at the Home Affairs Select Committee. The man charged with setting up the 5 local inquiries, remember? He told them he'd been sidelined by the minister. He did not know what was going on. This isn't governance. This is chaos. Or perhaps more accurately, this is by design. Confusion and delay as policy instruments to avoid accountability. So I'm reading some of your comments as well. I'm not sure why you say some UK Muslims. It's Labour Party policy, Jen. It's Labour Party policy. Perhaps the most damning indictment of all of the government's willingness to ignore the explicit wishes of the victims themselves. Marlon Weston, I don't get on with Marlon, by the way, if you saw him yesterday. He blocked me on X some time ago whilst he was sucking up to the Labour Party politicians, believing that they'd look after him. Well, he's on his own journey, isn't he? And I think he's now finding that all roads lead to the same place. Raja Miah is not a liar. Raja Miah knew what the politicians were going to do from the outset, which is why I did not play to their rules and play by their game. His daughter, and I have no doubt I felt for him, by the way, as a father, of course I felt for him, trafficked, abused, raped. He had this to say: the government should be ashamed of themselves and they should hold a national inquiry. Even Andy Burnham, we forced him because he's neck deep in the cover-up. Even Andy Burnham, whose assurance reviews, by the way, were part of the cover-up, is now supporting calls for a public inquiry. Of course, he wants it to be limited. Like hell it's going to be limited. Harriet Harman wants one. Sarah Champion want one. Even one of the Manchester MPs, the Gorton guy, former leader of Manchester Council, he wants one as well. But Phillips knows better. Apparently, her personal experiences trumps the expressed wishes of the victims themselves. I wonder how many victims he has sat and held hands with in court of grooming gangs, Phillips said. To the Shadow Home Secretary, I think it was, who dared question her approach. Well, why don't you tell us, Jess Phillips? How many survivors of the Pakistani rape gangs have you sat in court with holding hands? How many? This emotional blackmail is as transparent as it is offensive. The question isn't about Jess Phillips's personal compassion. It's about whether her policy will deliver justice. And the truth is, it won't. So she has to make it about her. Throughout the debate, Phillips peddled a false narrative. We can either take immediate action or conduct a thorough national inquiry, but not both. You're the bloody government. This is absolute nonsense, pure, unadulterated nonsense. Nothing, absolutely nothing, prevents the government from pursuing both approaches simultaneously. Take immediate action through police investigations, whilst also establishing a comprehensive national inquiry. Her claim that we already had a national inquiry is equally, and I'll be polite, disingenuous. The Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, ICSA, led by Professor Alexis Jay, was a whitewash. It was a whitewash. Maggie Oliver, this morning, stated the same. It was a whitewash. And even then, it was a broader investigation, not at all specifically focused on the unique pattern of the Pakistani rape clans. The one town they were meant to look at, Telford, they decided not to look at, which is why we went on to have the Telford inquiry. And Maggie Oliver's own testimony was doctored, altered by the inquiry team, who, by the way, by the time Alexis J got to it, I think we're in the third or fourth chair of ICSA, with a whole host of significant organisations working in child safety withdrawing the support from it because it was a cover-up. As for why they won't support a public inquiry, there was a DUP minister who got up, Jim Allister, I think his name was. And he pointed out that the government is about to spend tens of millions of pounds on a public inquiry to meet the political demands of one group in Ireland around the Omagh bombings, but denying the national inquiry to this national scandal of 100,000, if not more, children who were gang raped. Perhaps that tells us the truth we need to know, that some victims matter more than others. And in the hierarchy of race, we know working class girls from deprived communities are always going to be at the bottom, less deserving of justice than others, especially when they're white. Maybe it tells us something more sinister, that some truths are too dangerous to be fully examined. And I'm clear, all the way up to the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, there are Labour Party politicians directly incriminated in this cover-up. Thank you, Rajesh. Throughout the debate, Phillips wrapped herself in a cloak of moral superiority. When Lee Anderson stood up and asked her if she was part of the cover-up, her indignation knew no bounds. Righteous anger is not a substitute for effective policy, Miss Phillips. Personal experience, however valuable, does not trump the need for comprehensive justice. The question remains, why is this government so resistant to a national inquiry with statutory powers? What are they afraid might be uncovered? Let me tell you what a real inquiry would reveal. Natasha, welcome. My work is completely free. You can share it, you can copy it. Government ministers have taken it and passed it off as their own. It makes no difference to me. Please use as you see fit. What would a real inquiry reveal? It would investigate all communities, not just a cherry-picked few. Lisa Nandy, the Wigan Lee MP, a few weeks ago, and most of you will have missed it because it's not your thing. I get it, it's not your thing. So I don't, this is why I'm here. Lisa Nandy, in an interview she gave, made reference to how it would make sense to have some inquiries in the places where there was no grooming gangs. So the cherry-picked few will be the ones where they can not just control the investigations like in Oldham, but go and investigate the places where nothing ever happened. A real inquiry would compel witnesses to testify and go after the evidence. There would be no hiding of the evidence. No minutes of meetings would go missing. Stonewalling of local authorities and police forces would not be possible. A national inquiry would identify patterns across different regions, revealing institutional failures at the highest levels, but also, either I'm lying or they're covering it up, because I believe this was a network of Pakistani clans that operated across the country, and I believe that from the very testimonies of the survivors. How can you investigate something like this that took place on a cross community, cross towns, across cities, and try and contain the investigation to one town or one city, and not have that evidence shared? How can you do that? Of course we need to identify patterns, and what those patterns will show for my Mirpuri brethren is that you have a problem. Your dads, your cousins, your uncles, your first cousin marrying scum, all of you who are involved in this and part of the cover-up, we will find you, and we will not just send you to prison. I wouldn't even bother sending them to prison. I'd help fund that airport in Mirpur and put them on flights and their families and deport a lot of them. And I am a committed anti-racist, and this is where I've got to. This is where I've got to. An inquiry, a real statutory national inquiry, would apply consistent standards across the country rather than a patchwork approach. I'm a systems person. You've seen it, those of you follow my work. You've got 5 local inquiries with 5 different terms of reference, with 5 different types of investigations. It's a complete mess. What they're proposing is a complete mess. We need something consistent across the country. And most importantly, Phillips doesn't want to go there. She wants to talk about the perpetrators. And when she talks about those involved in the cover-up, she never mentioned the politicians. Most importantly, it will examine the potential failures at every level, including within government departments and political parties. Mate, I find it so difficult. I find it so difficult. Is it any wonder Jess Phillips is behaving the way she is? Resistant, lying, moral outrage. Is it any wonder? Let's be honest about what is happening here. This isn't about what's best for victims. This isn't about justice. This is about political expedience. The government fears what a comprehensive inquiry might reveal about certain communities, the Pakistani one, the Mirpuri one, about institutional failures, about political decisions made over decades. The Conservative MP Saqib Bhatti, I think it was, asked how the government would compel councils like Bradford who have refused to participate. Phillips had no answer, because there is no answer within her flawed framework. This should set alarm bells ringing for every person who cares about justice in this country. Phillips's final argument in Parliament was perhaps the most revealing. When challenged that no one had been held accountable for covering up these crimes, she responded with, "Nobody has gone to prison following the Hillsborough inquiry. Oh, so that makes it okay then? Because one cover-up was successful, so should another one be. Shameless!" This breathtaking cynicism tells us everything we need to know. Phillips doesn't expect anyone to be held accountable. She doesn't expect justice to be done. The inquiries are a box-ticking exercise, nothing more, and her mates, Jim McMahon, Debbie Abrahams, Andy Burnham, Angela Rayner, and a whole host of others will get away with what they have done. Thank you for the super chats. My apologies if I'm not engaging with you in the normal way as I would do. I wanted to get this out from me to you, and we'll have an opportunity in a little while. If you're finding value, I'll just pause, I'll just have a drink. If you're finding value, I know you're on your lunch breaks, please like, at the very least like. There's 460 of you, at the very least like. And please, I am 100% community funded. I'm reliant, all my work is for free, and I am reliant on you to take out a subscription to Redwall and the Rabble. It's as simple as that. Either for free, or if you can afford it, the £3 or the £30 for the year. And if you don't want to subscribe, a monthly commitment like that, you can just do a one-off, buy me a coffee. And no, I am not at all embarrassed for those who try and troll me on X. I am proud that my work is independent and funded by ordinary people. Sorry, I'm just trying to I see what happens. Okay. Sorry, I've got a jerry-rigged setup here, so some things aren't working properly, so I'm trying to work it out. Post my PayPal link. My PayPal link, sir, is here. PayPal.me Recusant9. We've seen what she said about Oldham Council. The government's pattern of deception was laid bare in that remarkable exchange. When challenged about how the government would compel reluctant councils to participate in inquiries, Phillips claimed that Oldham Council had written, I believe, twice before to the government. This triggered an immediate point of order from the opposition benches. Oldham Council had never written to the last government. The two opposition parties had, I know because I helped them. The Labour Party-run council had repeatedly blocked calls to write to the government. This included the council led by a woman called Amanda Chadderton, who was the leader for a period before we took her out. She not only voted down repeatedly calls for a public inquiry, she was rewarded. Once we got rid of her, she was rewarded with a key paid role in Yvette Cooper's team. That's the Home Secretary. This wasn't a minor slip. It was a deliberate attempt to rewrite history and deflect responsibility. Phillips knew exactly what she was doing. The Speaker had to intervene because she was being called outright a liar from the opposition benches. And he said something along the words of, "I'm sure if there's been a mistake, the Minister will correct that." Did she bugger correct it? Her response, a half-hearted, "I will check the record. There was no admission of error, no correction, just more evasion. This brief exchange reveals everything you need to know about how this government operates. Distort, deflect, and when caught, refuse to acknowledge the truth." I don't know what to say, Lindsay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Make no mistake. This fight is far from over. The cynic in me sees the Channel 4 Groomed and national scandal as a means of containing this debate, because I don't want it to stay where Groomed, the national debate, what national scandal wants it. I want heads to roll. I want our government to support a national inquiry, and I want everyone who was involved, not just the perpetrators, but those involved in failing their children and then the subsequent cover-up, to go to prison. I want every survivor to get compensation, if need be, out of the pension pots of those involved. And at the very least, and again, a reflection of how far I've come on my journey, I'd slashed foreign aid for a year. I'd made sure every one of those children and their families were looked after forevermore. You saw just a handful of them yesterday. Imagine what it does to you when you've been meeting people like this for decades. I can't imagine what Maggie Oliver's gone through. I don't know, Lindsay. Once we get the data, Baroness Casey is meant to do audit, is meant to include an analysis of the race and religion of the perpetrators, and that's meant to be published next week, the week after, by the end of May is the revised timetable. This fight is far from over. The government may think they can manage this scandal with half measures and delay tactics. They've read the mood of the nation wrong. They are wrong. The voices of the victims grow louder every day. The demands for truth from the likes of you and me cannot be silenced, no matter how many times they arrest people like me. Bradford Council can refuse to cooperate. Jess Phillips can hide behind reviews and task forces. The government can pretend that 5 inquiries is sufficient for a scandal affecting at least 50 towns. But the truth has a way of emerging no matter how powerful the forces aligned against it. Aligned against us. The Pakistani Rape Clan scandal, and that's what I call it, the Pakistani Rape Clan scandal, represents one of the darkest chapters in our nation's history. 100,000 more children betrayed by the very institutions meant to protect them, and now betrayed again by a government that refuses to pursue the truth wherever it may lead. This isn't just a political failure. It is moral abomination. I, for one, will not rest until the full truth is exposed. Those 3 whys. Why did these men gang rape these children? Why did the authorities look the other way? And why are the politicians still covering up? I will not rest until the truth of those questions have been exposed and justice is done, and neither should any of you. I know the tactics of the establishment. I once worked for them. They hope you will lose interest. They hope you will get tired and think there's no way we can do anything, and accept the reports that hold no one accountable. Lessons learned. We've been there so many times before. We know this for what it is. So we need to prove them wrong. We must not fall into their traps again. For every victim whose cries for help were ignored, for a truth that demands to be heard, we must continue. The cover-up, as you can see, continues. But so do we, and every day our numbers grow. All I ask you, for those of you who say, Raja, what can we do? Share. Speak out. Share. Know right from wrong. And if you can, support me and support people like me. It makes a massive difference. It honestly makes a massive difference. And for those who've asked, yes, I have a lot more on Jess Phillips that should end her career. Please, if you have joined me for your lunch and I've took time away, I'm going to go and pick my daughter up from school. The plan is to go for a picnic for our teas. Please, if you can, take out a subscription to Redwall and the Rabble. It makes a massive difference to me. You don't even have to pay. Our numbers are low. We're in the low thousands. Please, please, please take out a subscription. We need numbers to win this. When I speak, I need to be speaking out not just for me, but I need to be speaking out, amplified, supported by, I'd like to think, at least 10,000 of the people of our nation. So please subscribe to Redwall and the Rabble. And as I say, I am 100% community funded. I am on Rupert Lowe's inquiry team, and if you follow that work, you will know I've refused all payment from that as well. I'm proud that a small community of people have sustained me. And you need to understand, if you're new to me, that I have also been on a journey. These people nearly killed me. They left me suicidal after they told lie after lie about me and tried to have me imprisoned on fabricated charges. And all because I refused to remain silent to the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of children. For those of you new to me, my name is Raja Miah. It's been a pleasure.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.